I'd like to welcome you all to the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission meeting. Today is our Friday meeting. The agenda is short, so we shouldn't be here long, but we got some really special awards to give today. We're going to start with the invocation and pledge. I've asked Commissioner Tommy Woods to lead us in the prayer, and Commissioner Jimmy Granberry will follow leading us with the pledge.
Group of men and women that joined together here today, Lord, and the awesome responsibility you put before us, Lord. We thank you for the outdoors that you blessed us with, the responsibility to take care of those. Lord, we seek your wisdom in every decision we make here today, Lord. And we thank you. This is just a great opportunity. Just give us all safe travels home. Thank you again. We love you. All these things we pray in the name of Jesus. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Danette, would you call the roll?
Angie Box, Jim Ripley.
He's
Dennis,
here online.
He is. Dennis Gardner.
Here.
Jimmy Granberry.
Here.
Steve Jones. Connie King.
Here.
Tony Sanders.
Here.
James Stroud.
Did you hear me?
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Kent Woods.
Available.
Tommy Woods.
Present.
Hank Wright. Brian McLaren.
Here.
Kurt Holbert.
Here.
Chairman, we have quorum.
Thank you. Might mention to the public, just so they know, that as long as we're in a state of emergency, the commissioners can be on Zoom and vote and participate in the meeting. So it's a little something different. Normally they're required to be here in person before they can vote, just so everybody knows. But Danette, Commissioners Ripley, Woods, Stroud, and Jones are all on Zoom. On your iPads, you've got a copy of the minutes from our August meeting.
So moved.
Got a motion from Commissioner Granberry. Second from Commissioner Sanders. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Director Wilson, do you have any announcements?
Well, I do have an announcement in that the presentation that I was going to make this morning will not take place today because Barbara Schaefer could not be here for unforeseen circumstances. So we will try to give her that recognition at the next month's commission meeting.
Okay, thank you. Again, want to welcome all our guests. We've got a lot of guests here today, a family of TWRA employees. We appreciate you all being there. I won't read the list because I'm going to leave somebody out if I do. It's good to have Mr. and Mrs. Dyes back with us today from the Tennessee Fur Harvesters Association. They're probably the most dedicated two people I know in the state to attend these meetings. And I hope the Fur Harvesters Association appreciates them like they should. But it's really been a pleasure in my years of being a commissioner to get to know you guys. I appreciate what you do for our state. At this time, we've got something that's not on the agenda. We've got a special award that the commission decided to give this morning. Commissioner Ripley, I'm going to call on you, if you would. I think you know.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Speak just a little louder.
Okay. Well, this is a special award, as you said. I think everyone knows that Chris Richardson is a very, very vital member of the executive team and that we depend on him for a lot of information and so forth and so on. He's also an Eagle Scout. And one of the things that Eagle Scouts know is that you're prompt. You need to be on time. I think his little saying is 15 minutes early is 20 minutes late. So anyway, I also know that Chris spends Thursday nights in preparation for Friday meetings, and sometimes we'll stay up nearly all night preparing. You'll notice that he never uses notes. Check that out. And I learned that the reason for that is he has memorized everything that he's going to say on Friday morning. So he doesn't get a whole lot of sleep. And we wanted to recognize Chris with something that we're calling the On Time All the Time Award. The On Time All the Time Award, and I'll let the chairman take it from here. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Chris.
That's one of the best things as chairman is to get to give these good awards and honor our employees. But Commissioner Granberry, I think if Chris will come forward, you have the award, and we'll get a picture, and we'll get Lee up here to get a picture of him with his award. We'll get your picture out front. I thought you would have some words to say.
Oh, I do. Yeah. I'll be brief because I know I'm standing between us and real awards, but I want to thank the commission. It's very thoughtful, particularly Commissioner Ripley. It will not soon be forgotten, the words that you had today, nor there may be payback in order for you. So you always have a lot to do with my preparation and are very needy sometimes on Thursday evenings. But you're always helpful in staying right there with me as late as possible to make sure that preparation's done right. So thank you all very much, and there will be payback, I promise.
All right. First on the agenda, we have Captain Matt Majors, our boating investigator. We'll call him up. And Commissioner Sanders, I'm going to give you just a second. I think you wanted to say a few words before he was able to talk.
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Chairman. It's as many of you know, I've been a hunter safety instructor. It'll be 25 years in February, and I was telling the chairman, Matt's first assignment was in Hamilton County. That's where I got to know him about 19 years ago, and I've watched Matt's career from an officer there in Hamilton County. Watched him not only that have 3 daughters and watch his life with his daughters, and so it's been a pleasure to watch Matt grow with the agency to what he's become today, which is a top-notch boating investigator. But I do have so let me just say, Matt, it has been a pleasure to work with you for 20 years, and I appreciate that. But I do have one funny story. Not that this is the time for that, right? It is. Okay. So I had done a hunter safety class with Matt that morning, one Saturday morning at Highland Sportsman Club. Now this was in the day when we would have 100 students, and we were doing 6 classes a year. I mean, it was just a tremendous amount of work. So I had done this class with him. He had been the officer that came up, spoke to all the kids and everything. So that afternoon, I go fishing with a local legend who has been on TV for like 50 years. And we're out fishing in the Tennessee River. And Matt and someone else, I don't remember who the other officer was, come up and they pull up to us to check. And I said, I just did a class with you. And he said, yeah, I know, but I didn't see your hunter's license or your fishing license at the time. So here I am in the Tennessee River drifting down with this guy filming it, a TV show, and Matt's checking my license, and we had just done probably our 20th hunter safety class. So that kind of let me know what kind of officer he was going to be going forward. So anyway, so Matt, congrats on what you've done so far and what you're doing. And had a great time catching up with you last night. Even though we live 10 miles apart, it was kind of fun to just catch up last night. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. I appreciate it. Chairman Holbert and the rest of the commission, thank you for having me up here today. I have been threatened by Ms. Dannette to keep this to 10 minutes, so I'll keep it to 10 minutes. But asking me to talk about boating accidents, I wonder where we got that. Y'all just look this way. Don't look that way. Y'all just look this way.
Quite interesting, I'll have to say.
Nobody panic. Nobody panic. Just look at me. I know how you feel, Chris. Moving forward. Thank y'all for having me and asking me to talk for 10 minutes only about one of my passions is pretty tough, but I'll do my best. As I told her, yes, ma'am. So 2020 has been somewhat of a unique year for all of us. In comes this pandemic, and all of a sudden, all of these boaters and fishermen have all this free time. And they're wanting to get reunited with the outdoors. And so they do that. A huge increase in anglers and boaters. But at the same time that happened, something else unique happened. Our officers had to socially distance. So increased numbers of boaters are challenges to manage sometimes on some of these very major waterways. So our officers were having to sort of pull back and take a more observant officer stance to deal with some of these boaters. Most of the time they were only dealing with things that were very obvious safety concerns. So they weren't having quite as many personal contacts as they were in years past. But our boat ramps and our lakes and rivers are full. So that'll lead into where I'm going with the rest of this. What you're seeing here is a 10-year trend graph, and our 2020 statistics are on the right there in red. And these are property damage incidents. It's important to mention that our threshold for reporting to the Coast Guard is a property damage incident on the waterway must include more than $2,000 worth of property damage to the vessels. Our officers respond to a number that don't quite reach that threshold. They'll still investigate those, but these are the ones that we report to the U.S. Coast Guard. You can see we're trending just a little bit high with 74 this year. Moving on to the serious injury accidents. It's important to note here that these are injuries that were treated by on-scene medical professionals, or they did seek hospital treatment or should have been treated. 52 incidents here, so we're kind of where we need to be there, trend data wise. However, one injury is too many. I think we can all agree on that. 52 incidents, but we've had a total of about 75 people injured. So some of these collisions involve multiple people being injured at one time. Moving into the fatal incidents, where you can see we're trending a little bit higher. You know, I think we probably expected this with the increase in boaters, and this is actually a lower number than I thought we would see, because in speaking to our officers, our command staff throughout the state, they had never seen this many boaters and this many anglers on our waterways. So as a boating investigator, a whole lot of weekends I spent holding my breath, hoping bad things didn't happen, but unfortunately they still did. Just a quick look at the numbers this year, I can tell you about 30% of these fatalities are going to have alcohol and drug related contributing factors. This startles me, but this is a national trend. You know, we're seeing this across the country. So that really proves how proactive our officers have to be when it comes to enforcing boating under the influence laws. Now, another thing I want to bring to your attention is the continued increase in paddlecraft use. It's very hard to go down the road on the weekends and not find cars that are not pulling kayaks, stand-up paddle boards. When I started, to Commissioner Sanders' point, back in 2002, it was odd to check a kayak or a canoe on our waterways. But the truth is now they're everywhere, everywhere. Everybody sells them. You can go to any hardware store, Walmart, all your sporting goods stores, they all sell them. And they're a very affordable alternative to enjoy our great waterways and rivers. So very popular, inexpensive, and our officers are having to deal with them in spades. One of the things you'll see coming up here is because of this explosion of this paddlecraft use, increased man hours by our wildlife officers, increased search and rescue time. We're doing a good job through education, through not only classes, but also through enforcement and in education. But as you can imagine, some of these out-of-the-way agency access areas that might have 2 or 3 or 4 boat trailers at them, historically, now they're packed. People are parking in the roads. So we're dealing with access issues. People are needing that further access to enjoy these wonderful waterways that we have throughout the state. And one thing I didn't mention on that, I'll go back one, is speaking to the command staff in some of these areas, I reached out to officers that work these shallow rivers that are very popular for canoes and kayaks. Years ago, maybe 400 or 500 kayaks, canoes will go down these rivers. Now they're seeing upwards of 1,000 to 1,500 per day. So those are shocking numbers, and those are things that our agency and our officers are having to deal with, absolutely. So with that being said, you know, we're always keeping a close watch on separating out any trending data. Paddlecraft, we want to always look at those and see how they are. So for 2020, we're at 4 fatals. Again, 1 injury, 1 death. Those are all too many for us. We want those numbers to be 0, and that's what our officers are working to do. So why do we investigate these? Well, it's our agency's job, number one. We can get a wealth of statistical data that will help us. Sir?
Wait a minute. I think Mr. Grammer, on paddlecraft, I got a feeling before we move on, I'll
Yes,
let
sir.
him. I'll let him ask it.
Just a quick question. 3 questions. One are the $2,000 threshold on incidents. Do y'all have any kind of guesstimation as to how many of those aren't even reported? So, you know, that would seem to me if somebody tears a lower unit out, they might not even report it. But
Yes.
That's $2,000 to $5,000 number.
Yes. So we're figuring there's a very high percentage of those are not even reported. Even some people that are involved in injury accidents, you know when you're on the roadway, you call the police, but not all of our sportsmen are aware that they need to call the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency to report a boating accident.
Right.
So they certainly are underreported, and those numbers are, in my opinion, well lower than they truly are in the real world.
So like if I was in Alabama over Labor Day, and the water out of Smith Lake where I was located, most of the patrol was done by the local police, not the agency. So do y'all coordinate your numbers? Are they giving you their numbers of incidents? If Metro Police, for example, is in downtown Nashville and they see a report, so that's included in our numbers, or?
Great question, absolutely. We're lucky enough that we've gotten the word out to all these police departments. They usually say, ooh, that's the water. We'll give those to the wildlife officers. So they're pretty good. But you go to other states and it's not always that way. There may be money given to sheriff's departments, police departments, highway patrols even to patrol waterways. And they, in turn, would need to mend those numbers to get correct data. But as far as I know, most of those are funneled straight to us to do those reports. Now, a lot of people will call us and say, I had some damage, no injuries. I think it's $400 or $500, but let me call you back. And so we'll get their information. If they find out it's $3,500, we'll do a report for them. Absolutely.
So a kind of a joint question. On the paddlecraft, I know that's been a huge topic the last couple of years, and it's growing. Obviously, this year it's magnified. Are those folks subject to the BUI laws that a powerboat would be subject to? And second part of the question is the shallow water boats that we're recommended to be purchased. Will that help you guys in your policing and enforcement of the rules on all these new paddlecraft boats?
Two good questions. The first one, no, if it's not powered by wind or electricity, gasoline or diesel, those paddlecraft, they're not subject to BUI laws. However, if they're a danger to themselves or somebody else, our officers can take action through utilizing public intoxication or turning them over to a local police or sheriff's department for them to take that proper action that would be outside of what we normally do. But our officers will take action if we find somebody that's just dangerous, absolutely.
And I guess part of that question, does that include life preservers as well?
They are required to have life preservers on this. And you know, that's a common thing. And just talking to our couple officers that are over here, they've worked very metropolitan areas, and they said, you know, they're seeing these kayaks, canoes, stand-up paddle boards in the middle of the lake at night with no lights on and no life jackets. So there's a lot more enforcement, but a lot of that is through education. A lot of our officers are very informative to these people and let them know what they need, and they're very receptive to that information. So we believe we correct a lot of things just by that personal contact. But thanks to 2020, we haven't had as much of that personal contact. And to your second question, yes, those shallow water boats, you know, those shallow areas can fluctuate so much. So our officers do need to have a multitude of different options as far as boats to go out and get on the water, not only in search and rescue time, but for enforcement patrols as well. So certainly a benefit. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Matt, I've got one question while we're
Yes,
on
sir.
paddlecraft. I'm going to give you a scenario. It's the only way I know to ask it.
Okay.
But just say in Kentucky Lake, there's a group of paddle boarders out, and they're under the influence of alcohol or drugs, whichever one, but and they cause an accident with a powered boat or personal watercraft. Is there any responsibility that comes back on them, or is it no, because they weren't? It's not illegal. I mean, it's not illegal to paddle a
Good
kayak
question.
drunk. So,
Good.
so is there any responsibility that comes, because literally they could cause an accident that could cause that boat to crash and kill the occupants of the boat, and they were doing nothing. So that's my question.
Great question. Yes. In one of our jobs, our officers throughout the state, is we want to determine contributing factors and causes of these. And we look at both sides of it. And if impairment, irregardless of whether or not we can make a boating under the influence arrest, is important, we will put that. Some of our boating incidents where people just jump overboard, there's not a collision, but they're impaired, we will list impairment as a contributing factor. So yes, and then our job at that point is to present all our findings to the district attorney, and they'll make recommendations on what applicable charges should be levied, if any.
Okay. Any other question? Commissioner Gardner?
Yes, sir.
All right, now we're going to have to extend this time because this is going to take a little bit. I appreciate the briefing. It does the kayaking and the canoeing on these rivers. We've been collecting data for at least a year now. I guess my question, and maybe to you and or Chris or Bobby, is what are we doing with this data? How much of it do we need before we can evaluate that and see how it's impacting our waterways and our access areas, like you said, you know, with everybody parked on the roads, and it's hard to launch a boat with a trailer when you've got 14 kayaks or canoes down there. So we've got to try to find some balance between the fishermen and the paddlecraft users. So where are we at with that, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a group decision between the director's office, boating and law enforcement. I think they'll really have to explore all those options. So I would defer probably to the director's office to answer that question.
Yeah. Commissioner Gardner, the reality is the rule requiring the data to be submitted to the agency first and foremost only applies to commercial outfitters. It's not going to capture any hard data relative to other user groups or individuals that privately own their own boats. That rule went into effect January of this year.
we are approaching actually our first mandatory reporting date where they're actually going to have some data. That'll be October 1st. So as it stands right now, we don't have data. The outfitters give us that data 3 times a year. One on May 1st, one on October 1st, and then again at the time that they renew their operation permit. So due to COVID and other things, most of the operators were not operating prior to in between January 1st and May 1st. Temperature and COVID kind of kept them all shut down. So we didn't get any records of data there. We expect to get some in October from those permitted outfitters. And what that data looks like, we'll have to see when it comes. But I think it's certainly going to at least provide us some information on which particular access areas are getting the most use and help us start to develop a plan to try to accommodate where we can.
All right, and I guess that leads to my next question, which is ratio-wise, and I know the availability of these kayaks, paddle boards, and canoes is just exploded. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can hardly find one right now, just because they've all sold out due to the COVID and everybody getting outdoors, which is great. But you know, we got to balance this out somehow. And so, what do you think the ratio is on, say, Caney Fork to outfitters, commercial outfitters versus private? Do you have any data on that, or can you even estimate it?
We don't. I'm sorry, Matt. I'll let you go next. We don't have any specific data. I think that there's some anecdotal data, and there's some data that we can extrapolate from our record keeping of how many different people we have checked on those rivers. But anecdotally, what the reports that I'm getting both from the outfitters and actually people that live on the river, both Caney Fork and the Harpeth, think that it's about a 50-50 proposition. That almost half of the traffic they're seeing on the waterways now are privately owned vessels.
So, has this created companies that are shuttling these folks back and forth to their cars?
The same outfitters that are leasing the boats in many respects are and that's one of the places that I'm getting anecdotal data about the numbers. A lot of our outfitters are reporting that their rentals are going down, their shuttles are going up.
Right. So the same people that were renting the vessels before are now turning it into a kayak Uber?
Pretty much, yeah. That's a good way to describe it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I look forward to getting that data. I just, for anybody that might be watching, I'm sure people are wondering what we're doing with it and you know, what we're doing to try to balance that between the recreational versus the sportsmen and women. So thank you.
Absolutely, and to echo what Mr. Richardson said is true in talking to some of the command staff. They, you know, years ago it used to just be all boat livery traffic, and now there's a huge increase in just those private owners that just need a ride to the top so they can float back down. So we're seeing both of those. Transitioning back and pleasing Ms. Danette to finish up here, we also are looking for criminal charges. Oftentimes these events are very dynamic and they are very preventable. I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't said the word accident, or I hope I didn't say the word accident yet. These are all preventable incidents. We can usually track back these contributing factors and causes to human error. And oftentimes they didn't mean for anything to happen, but they made a number of very poor decisions, at least one or more, to get themselves in that situation. So many times we're faced with presenting this evidence to the district attorney, and they are applying criminal charges in some of these incidents. So based on our numbers, what we get is we can tell you pretty close statistically, you know, when, where, and why these accidents are going to happen. And our law enforcement command staff are utilizing this statistical data that we provide them to utilize our enforcement officers better. High visibility patrols, putting them in the right places to try to slow down some of this more reckless or negligent behavior that may be happening. Saturday 2 to 10. I know that's a shocker for you. That's when everybody's out there. But that's when our lakes are populated, and that's when many of these accidents happen. You'll notice some of the names of lakes up there. These are our more common lakes, but they're very busy lakes. People love these lakes. and they're flocking to them. But at the same time, with increased traffic comes increased incidents. And we can tell you statistically why these things happen. People just not paying attention, improper lookout, negligent operation or impairment. So this is my 5 to 10 second soapbox slide. I'll be brief. Why do we really investigate these? And I just wanted to be honest with you. These are very critical incidents in someone's life. These incidents we investigate they will actually take the lives of loved ones. They will seriously injure or cripple people. And so we do this because of one reason and one reason only, the families that are involved. They want answers. They want to know, why does this happen? What happened was it his fault? Was it my fault? Who's at fault here? And that's the reason we do what we do, is the true human factor. And I'll leave you with this. I'm lucky enough I get to travel the United States and teach boat accident investigation to conservation officers, wildlife officers, and marine law enforcement officers all over. And you in this state right here have some of the best trained and best equipped officers to tackle that task, thanks to the support from Colonel Ryder as well as the director's office. They listen to us, give us what we need, and support us in our investigations. So we're in a very good place as far as boating investigations. I wish we would never have another one. I wish my job wasn't useful. But the truth is, we have a lot of boaters, so I'm still going to be useful. With that, any questions?
Commissioner Sanders?
Matt, I think it was around slide 5 or 6, something like that. When I was looking at the serious incidents, serious injury incidents, 12 and 13 were the highest that we had. Was there anything peculiar about 12 and 13? It luckily didn't equate to fatalities. 13 was high, but there was a lot of incidents.
I don't recall. I'd have to look back. You know, wildlife officers are really good at rain dances. I don't know if you know that. And on the weekends, sometimes those busy, hot weekends, we hope for rain because it does slow down some of the quantity of people that are out there. So a rain event on a really busy holiday weekend can really lower our numbers. While we don't want the public to not be out there, we do want those numbers lower. And incidentally, you mentioned one thing I failed to is on the fatalities. 2019, we had one of our lowest number of fatalities. That was really a statistical anomaly for the most part. We've only been in single digits 2 other years, 1965 and 1995. We've been keeping statistics since 1965. So that was really an odd year for us. So we're usually anywhere between 15 and 25 on the fatal. But again, I'll leave you with this. 1 is too many, and we're going to continue to work till we can get that number to 0.
Just one quick follow-up. Do we have a lot of incidents outside the summer boating periods? Hunters and people like that on the water? I know hypothermia obviously would be not a good thing to fall in the water, but I didn't know.
It seems that we do. You know, everybody says, well, you know, it's past the holiday weekend, looks like boating's over. Have y'all looked around? Our boaters are on the lake 12 months out of the year. So unfortunately, we will have some of those wintertime incidents with our hunters and our wintertime fishermen. We'll investigate those. They're few and far between, but they're still happening because people are enjoying our wonderful outdoors.
Commissioner Gardner?
Yeah, when you mentioned earlier about you should report your accidents, I happened to be on the Cumberland River with my brother-in-law and sister and in their boat, and we hit a log, tore up the whole lower unit of it, and never reported it. It was a insurance claim, but didn't know that I should. I mean, to me, it was no different than I had a flat tire on my truck, and you know, I fixed my truck. I didn't call the police and tell them I had a flat tire. You know. So how do we get the word out that you would like to have those numbers and that information? Because I don't think people know it.
I think you're right on there. A lot of boaters don't know. They don't. When we talk to them about it, they're like, okay, that makes sense. We just didn't really realize that we need to report it. We have printed up posters in the past to put at marinas and lakeside areas where people launch boats that says this is the criteria for reporting boat accidents. And they were yellow and black, and they were very eye-catching. We've done some things on social media occasionally, but you're probably looking at the one guy that'll run that flag to the top of the flagpole if we figure out how to do that. I definitely want this data because that helps us enforce our laws better.
Yeah, and I guess to me the difference is, my interpretation of a boating accident is that I had a problem with somebody else, or I ran aground. Sure. Not that I hit a piece of floating debris, which in our case was a log, and it just disabled the lower unit. And we got towed back to the thing, but I feel like, man, I'm on the commission, and I didn't realize that. So
very understandable. Part of our training too is with the local 911 centers. When people call in and say, my daughter fell off the tube and she's broke her leg, they don't see that as a boating accident. They don't understand that that's reportable for us, so they may just dispatch fire and EMS, and our wildlife officers may never know. We may learn when they get to the hospital, and a lady at the hospital's cousin was a wildlife officer. She said, "Oh, you got to do a report on this." We find out in some of the strangest ways because sometimes there is a disconnect on truly what is reportable and what is not. So what we've tried to tell our 911 centers, if it's an incident on the water, give our wildlife officers a call, give our dispatchers a call, and let us determine whether or not we need to be involved in that investigation.
Thank you.
Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt probably wouldn't mention this, but as you can imagine, our boating officers and wildlife officers who work on the water and boating investigators, when they have to investigate a personal injury or a fatality, how stressful, how emotional stressful it could be on them. And they, not just witnessing the personal injury or the fatality, but having to deal with the families of the victims, of the people who were injured or die. And so they do a lot of grief counseling too. And I don't know if they're trained in that, I'm sure they are, but it's a very tough job for them that just a lot of people don't realize what they have to go through. So I'm going to point that out.
I agree.
Absolutely true.
Any other questions? And one thing I noticed, I got the honor of sitting through a boater safety class this week with my daughter. But I did notice the officers really stress the reporting of the accidents, and that's good because our the generation that's got to take the boater safety class is getting taught this, and the older generation like us, unless we take it, we don't. But anyway, that's a great way to get it out.
Yes.
Of what's reportable and what you should do. And so anyway, they did a great job teaching the class. But I want to elaborate on what Bobby said. I've seen you, and I've seen you working at an accident scene. I won't mention the one, but I wanted to visit the family. Me and former Director Carter came, and seeing you handle the situation and the other officers there, it's a situation that I don't want. I mean, it's a tough job to see those families waiting for answers, and realistically, you not being able to give them the answer they want that day, and having to tell them it's going to be another day or another week before that answer's here, and the answer's not going to be good either way. But just know that you are appreciated, and a really tough job, and I appreciate what you do and all our officers every day. So
Fantastic.
Thanks for coming today and presenting this to us. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call on Frank Fiss. Got some awards.
Thank you, Chairman Holbert and Commission, for the opportunity to speak today about our fisheries employees. We're very proud of the work all of our fisheries employees have done this year. It was a challenging year due to COVID. As you heard, there were a lot of people out this year to serve, and a lot of the work they did will provide fishing for years to come, some of the work that was done at the hatcheries. But today I just want to highlight two of our employees, a technician and a biologist. I'm going to start with Rick Bean, who was hired in 1978. He served most of his career at Buffalo Springs Hatchery, where he made improvements in trout production, before transferring to lead the crew at the reservoir fisheries in Region 4. In his current role, Rick organizes the maintenance of reservoir sampling equipment from nets to boat motors. His skills at repairing boat motors, trailers, electronics, and sensitive equipment such as water quality meters has saved the agency thousands of dollars in repair bills. Rick is highly skilled at troubleshooting problems and offers quick solutions while afield. And this really helps out. If you've got a whole crew of people out there and the show stops, we lose a lot of time and money. So to have someone that can think quick and fix it and keep everybody working is a huge asset to us. He also takes the lead in maintaining the reservoir work shop. Without being prompted, he keeps the grass mowed and keeps the shop clean and organized. So everyone that comes to the Buffalo Springs WMA, sees a pretty clean shop. Rick's previous supervisor at the reservoir crew there retired during March of 2020, and Rick stepped up to fill the role of the reservoir data collection for data collection with no supervisor. He organized the electrofishing survey, prepared all the equipment, and looked at all the historical data to figure out where to go to get the data we need. He also ensured that the sampling sites were visited in the proper way and in the right temperature regimes that they have to do. It's not as simple as just going out. You've got to watch the weather to get it right. Without being asked to do so, Rick willingly took on this role, and he did it without hesitation. He took ownership in the data, and he kept the project going between managers without any gaps. And this took a lot of long hours and a lot of time on the water and sometimes adverse temperatures. When Alan arrived, who was the new supervisor for Rick, when he arrived, Rick showed him all the protocols for data collection and helped him get acquainted with their reservoirs. The transition between managers was seamless because of Rick's willingness to relay his experience and knowledge to the new manager. And despite all these reservoir responsibilities, Rick is still an invaluable asset to Buffalo Springs Hatchery, where he worked for several years. He readily shares his institutional knowledge with the new managers that are there now. He has such a good memory, they rely on him all the time to come find water lines, electric lines, where's this water coming from, where's it going? And it would cost a lot of money to have contractors come in and scope all that stuff out for us, and he just knows where it is. So he's a huge asset there still. So in closing, Rick is a model employee who is patient, prepared, and always willing to help anyone. And most importantly, after 42 years, he still brings enthusiasm to the job. So we really appreciate Rick. Could you come up and take your plaque here, and any of your supervisors that want to join you? I don't know if we'll do pictures now or later. How's it going to work? Here. At least get our director in here. I'm not going to hold it, Rick. I would if you let me here long enough. All right. Thank you, Lee.
Speech.
Congratulations. All right. Our next award is for the Fisheries Biologist of the Year. And this year, the award goes to John Ellis. If you advance the slide, please. Thanks. Okay. John is currently the manager of Tellico State Fish Hatchery, and he was nominated because of his innovative approach to managing the hatchery as well as his outreach work. As hatchery manager, John has increased production by addressing production of trout by addressing water quality and quantity issues and by creating additional space to raise trout. He has promoted fishing in the area through media outlets and host special events at the hatchery. So a little history about Tellico Hatchery. Tellico Hatchery operates on a gravity-fed system, which means it takes water from the creeks that feed it. And each fall, as you know, leaves come down, and the hatchery staff must monitor leaf accumulation at the intake so that water can reach the hatchery. If the drains clog, the hatchery dies, essentially. So This had historically involved employees wading sometimes in the flooded rivers to stand on the intake and remove leaves with a rake. And during rain events, this process would often take place throughout the night. To make this process safer and more efficient, John installed a new arched intake top that would push leaves away with spray bars, a new walkway, and safety lights with remote controls to keep our people safe. This construction improved safety and reduced the risk of losing water to the hatchery from the accumulation of leaves. He also designed and installed a new leaf boom, which is extremely durable and capable during any water levels to deflect all the leaf load that would otherwise clog the intake. So a lot of engineering there to make our people safe and protect the hatchery. In addition to protecting the supply, John also increased hatchery capacity by renovating the old round pools that were built in the 1950s, and he added new fiberglass tanks inside the facility. John has not let the challenges of surface water supply in this old facility limit his vision of increased production there. He's been a go-getter to get that done. Also at Telco is the Southern Appalachian brook trout facility where we raise Southern Appalachian brook trout for distribution into their native range in Tennessee. And while this facility has had some success in the last few years, we are still challenged with nitrogen supersaturation in the water, which is bad for trout production. So to address this issue, John researched and purchased a gas infusion system for the facility. This unit reduced nitrogen supersaturation and increased oxygen levels, improving growth and reducing mortality of trout. So this innovation will enhance our efforts to restore brook trout to their native range in Tennessee. He also secured funding from Trout Unlimited to do this work. He received one of the largest grants that the chapter in Tennessee had ever given at $20,000 for this facility. Some other activities down at Telco are probably more personal and significant. On October 1st, 2017, a Navy T-45C Goshawk crashed into the mountains there, and the hatchery became a command post for the multi-level recovery effort. The crash resulted in the death of 2 naval aviators and occurred in a remote area of the forest. So John played a pivotal role in recovering these 2 fallen aviators. He also hosted the family members and the squadron mates of the fallen. All this service was recognized by the Navy with a naval letter of commendation, Bronze Commander's Challenge coin, and a Silver Commander's Challenge coin. To this day, under John's leadership, the hatchery continues to support servicemen and women. John has worked with the local Project Healing Waters chapter for the last 3 years to host a Veterans Day weekend at Telco Hatchery. John has coordinated with other TWA personnel, local anglers and guides, and many others to provide a wonderful experience for this veterans group. The anglers are guided on the delayed harvest section of Telco River and provided lunch at the hatchery. And John says this is one of his highlights of his career. And he's not alone. I got a letter from the Project Healing Waters group from Ross Schweinfurth. And I just have a little excerpt of that to read. If I get through it here. Okay. You have developed and cultivated the Telco events in November into the highlight event of each year for our disabled veterans. Many of our disabled veterans often reminisce at our monthly meetings about past Telco events, show pictures, and tell Telco stories, and encourage new program participants to be sure and clear their calendar for the upcoming event. Your work, John, has resulted in a positive impact for many disabled veterans. Several of our volunteers have relayed the emotion that they felt when assisting a disabled veteran in catching their very first trout on a fly during one of the November events. So that's, in every aspect, John has excelled as a professional in the agency, as a manager of Telco State Fish Hatchery. Many of the fisheries supported by the hatchery are the highest quality thanks to his efforts, and his commitment to staff has created a highly effective, positive work environment. So we congratulate John as Tennessee's Fisheries Biologist of the Year. Come on up, John.
Supervisor.
Thank you, Lee. You guys have boxes. And also, we have a print here from Dan Charley for each of you. Brook trout donated, so take that along with you. And we got one for Rick as well.
Thank you.
Sure. Chairman Holbert, that concludes the awards for fisheries. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I would encourage any commissioner that has not been to the Tellico Hatchery to make that trip. It's really a unique place. Went over there for the handicap ramp dedication, and several commission attended, but it is a special place, to say the least. So John, thanks for all you do over there, and especially for our veterans. It's awesome. Okay, is there any announcements from any of the commissioners or any other business? Commissioner Granberry?
I'd just like to thank Connie and Dirk last night for a wonderful fish fry, and their hospitality was really well appreciated by all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any comment from the public? Director Wilson? All right. Thank you all for attending, and we are adjourned.